A brief answer from the member for Montcalm. Absolutely, my colleague is entirely right. On March 1st, 2020, the CSQ, the CSD, and other unions spoke about just how important it is to increase the health transfers in order to eliminate the crisis that has resulted from the pandemic. And I'm sure that doesn't include long-term care homes. So there you go.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today is World Water Day. All living things on Earth need water to survive. But for many, this basic need is not being met. Hundreds of millions of people around the planet lack access to clean drinking water, including 41 First Nations communities right here in Canada. Access to clean drinking water is a fundamental human right, but increasingly, water is being treated as a commodity and profit center. Corporations are buying up water rights around the planet. They control freshwater supplies, aquifers, rivers, streams, and sometimes even the rain falling from the sky. They bottle water, privatize public water utilities, and extract maximum profit from a basic human necessity. Madam Speaker, we cannot stand by and accept this as normal. We must push back against the commodification of basic human needs. We must defend the human right to water. Thank you.
The honourable member of Halifax West.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to congratulate Nova Scotia's Nate Darling on achieving a professional basketball first for our province. Mr. Darling is originally from Bedford in the riding of Halifax West. On March 13, 2021, he became the first Nova Scotian ever to play in a regular season NBA game. A shooting guard for the Charlotte Hornets, Nate's debut rebounds with hope and excitement for his future as a professional basketball player. His entry into pro basketball is inspiring for many young Nova Scotian athletes with dreams of their own. In a recent statement, Basketball Nova Scotia referred to him as a role model for young basketball players in the province and said, "Nate is paving the pathway for basketball in Nova Scotia. Best wishes to Nate Darling. We're hoping your career is a slam dunk."
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Madam Speaker, late last month we lost a man who served his country and his community with honour and distinction. Colonel Robert Douglas grew up in Toronto, the son of a father who served in both World Wars, who took up a military calling of his own, enlisting with the Royal Regiment of Canada and serving with the SAS of the British Army in Malaya in the 1950s. After returning to Canada, he made his way to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and became commanding officer of the Royal Regiment. His career outside of the military took him from Toronto to Montreal with NCR and Merrill Lynch, a career generous in community service from the World Society for the Prevention of Animals to St. John's Ambulance, and as honorary colonel with several Canadian Army regiments, including the Grey and Simcoe Foresters and the Toronto Scottish Regiment. 2 years ago, he lost Anne, the love of his life of 61 years. To their children, Cam, Catherine, and Robert Gray, I send our deepest sympathies and our most profound thanks for the life of Colonel Robert Douglas.
The Honourable Member for Laval-les-Îles. Madam Speaker, I rise today to highlight the work our government does every day to improve the lives of Canadians and ensure their well-being.
Despite this unprecedented difficult time, our government continues tirelessly to serve Canadians and protect their rights.
I would like to thank the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities for having announced a $6.6 million investment, allowing for the completion of Laval's St. Dorothy pumping station.
Will provide an optimal wastewater management and better response to significant increases in the flow during rain or snow melt episodes. Thanks to this investment, flood will be avoided and Laval-les-Îles residents will be more secure. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Madam Speaker, I want to draw attention to the musical success of Louis-Kevin Célestin, better known under the stage name of Kaytranada. This young man grew up in Saint-Hubert and recently won 2 awards at the prestigious Grammys alongside artists like Beyoncé and Taylor Swift. His work, 10%, awarded for the Best Dance Recording, has had over 40 million hits on Spotify. His album Bubba was designated as the Best Dance or Electronic Album of the Year. It's his second album. He's already got a Grammy for Best Album in the category after only 2 albums. That's something. Being successful so young is promising, and I'm particularly certain that his many fans are waiting to see what he will come up with next. I was, up until a year and a half ago, an actor, and I always celebrate the cultural successes of those from Quebec, including Xavier Dolan, Céline Dion, Denis Villeneuve, Arcade Fire, all of whom show Quebec culture throughout the world. So to Kaytranada, bravo.
Missisquoi.
The Honourable Member for Brome-Missisquoi. Madam Speaker, yesterday was International Day of Forests. I want to take this opportunity to highlight the contribution of Stancia Platenga. This woman from Canton de Poton has been fighting to protect our forests and natural habitats for decades. She has a deep-seated love of nature, and this pushed her and her husband to create a land trust in 1987. It's one of the first of its kind in Quebec, based on the American land trust model. Today, there are over 80 similar trusts protecting Quebec forests. The Stancia Forest is a stunning sight, and those who visit it call it a paradise on earth. Her story shows the power of individuals to protect our land. Brome-Missisquoi as a whole has benefited from her hard work over the past 35 years. We are extremely grateful to her. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
Madam Speaker, today I am proud to recognize the great work of volunteers in my riding of Yellowhead. I want to give special recognition to the brand new food pantry at the Edson United Church, who have already been supplying free, nutritious hot meals to the community. I recently had the opportunity to visit the church, and it was fantastic to see shelves stocked and volunteers in action. They are working in cooperation with the Edson Food Bank, so they are not duplicating services, and the community gets the best of both organizations. Another fantastic initiative I would like to recognize is Edson's new shelter pods for the town's homeless population. Once completed, this project will help some of Edson's homeless find a safe and warm place to stay. These shelter pods are a commendable initiative that should be considered in all corners of the country. I am proud to represent a riding with such great organizations that have a strong sense of community and support people that are in need. Keep up the great work.
The Honourable Member for Toronto Danforth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, I would like to ask the House, do you have a favorite cocktail? Because if your answer is gin and tonic, then I'd like to tell you about a gin distillery in my community that makes not only great tasting gin, but they deserve a shout out for the amazing work they do for our community. At the beginning of the pandemic, Reed's Distillery converted their operations to make hand sanitizer, which they distributed to community members for free. The sweet smell of juniper berries was flowing throughout our community. And it was a wonderful example of how local businesses are a cornerstone for our community. But as I give a shout out to Reed's Distillery, I also need to point out how they have stepped up to provide opportunities for Black and Indigenous people who are interested in the distilling industry. Recognizing that Black and Indigenous talent is underrepresented in the industry, they created a targeted scholarship. Thank you so much, Reed's Distillery, for the work you do, and I am greatly happy to be able to say something about them today in the House.
The Honourable Member for Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to rise in the House today to wish an exceptionally healthy and happy New Year to the many Canadians celebrating Nowruz. Over the weekend, many in our country joined 300 million people around the world with cultural roots in Western and Central Asia to welcome in a new year. A 3,000-year-old tradition, Nowruz is a festive holiday celebrated, amongst others, by Persians, Afghans, Turks, Kurds, Zoroastrians, Baha'is, and Ismailis. Over the weekend, I had the pleasure to virtually join many around their half-scene tables to mark the spring equinox and to embrace the promise of new beginnings. Celebrated for several millennia, Nowruz is meant to bring together people of different cultures and languages to celebrate renewal, optimism, and light, all essential qualities that can guide us as we emerge with all the necessary vim and vigor to put the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic behind us. To everyone, Haruzatun Nowruz, Nowruzatun Piruz.
Member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Looking ahead to the upcoming fishing season, our BC public fishery is facing an uncertain future. I've met with countless members of the BC fishing community who are gravely concerned that if the Minister of Fisheries continues to ignore sound science, their futures are at risk. The science tells us there are over 110 million hatchery Chinook annually entering our Pacific waters, along with many rivers showing strong and even record returns. Closing the fishery simply isn't required. There are other solutions, including increasing opportunities for a marked selective fishery. I was honored to be one of 25 BC MPs to sign the member for North Okanagan Shuswap's letter calling on the minister to support this promising initiative. Marked selective fishing can help conservation efforts while also supporting economic and social activities. It's time the minister starts listening to the science and to the voices of British Columbians and support our BC public fishery.
The Honourable Member for Glengarry, Prescott Russell.
Monsieur le Président, samedi.
Mr. Speaker, last Saturday on March 20th, all Francophones and Francophiles around the world celebrated the International Francophonie Day. More than 300 million people speak French around the world. French is the fifth most spoken language in the world. In Canada, more than 8 million people speak French at home. Although this year we did not have the opportunity to get together in person, I want to thank all of the artists who amused us on Saturday. Pandemic or not, our artists continue to show us their art. And at home, be it Véronique Ducaire, Vanessa Winnett, Daryl Swam, just to name a few, these artists all made a choice to create in French, inspiring a new generation to create in French as well. Mr. Speaker, I wish a wonderful International Day of the Francophonie to all Francophones and Francophiles across the country who celebrated on Saturday.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian case of the novel coronavirus was reported by Health Canada on January 25, 2020. 422 days. 422 days of temporary measures with no long-term plan. 422 days of business shutdowns and sector collapses. And 422 days of widespread unemployment and mass job loss. We're all united in the worst way possible. Millions of Canadians from every sector, every province, and every background have been left behind, and the light at the end of the tunnel we've been hearing about burned out long ago. People don't want to rely on government support. They would rather just get back to work. The path of the Prime Minister's reimagined economy veers off into the unknown, leaving nothing but shutdowns, uncertain futures, and untested changes that will leave millions of Canadians behind. Canada's Conservatives are offering another path, a plan, one of security and certainty. Conservatives will secure jobs and secure Canada's future, delivering us a Canada where those who have been struggling the most to get through this pandemic can get back to work. We got Canada through the last recession, and with Canada's recovery plan, we'll make sure Canadians get through this one too.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Canada's future is at stake. The Liberal Prime Minister was slow to deploy vaccines and will be even slower to restart the economy. It's not time to rethink the economy. The Prime Minister wants to be at the center of attention and take us to something new with economic experiences that will leave millions of Canadians behind. All Canadian workers deserve to get their jobs back. All workers in all sectors of the economy deserve to be part of the economic recovery. The Prime Minister decided to pick which Canadians will have a future. That is not the right solution for millions of workers who built Canada. What the leader of the Conservative Party is proposing is a more secure future, a Canada with fewer slogans, but more money going into the pockets of families. After months of deprivation, Canadians want to have hope again of a better life. It's not by ignoring the millions and thousands of workers in traditional sectors that we will do that. As the leader of the official opposition said in his excellent speech on Friday, we need to rebuild Main Street after COVID-19. Only the Conservative economic recovery plan will ensure a stable economic future for Canadians.
Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and I believe this government has failed to address the spread of misinformation and hate through social media and the growing divide in wealth and prosperity. I believe that the more disparity we see, that the more people suffer and fight just to survive, the greater all divides among us will grow. In my community of London, Ontario, people from so many diverse cultural and ethnic backgrounds have fought back against this divide. They come together when events happen here at home or abroad. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused even greater disparity, but to highlight only a few organizations that have worked to counter it, I want to thank the Caring Canadian Society, Al Hayat's Ma Soup Kitchen, Canadian Cedars of Hope, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Group, and the United Six. There are so many more I want to give my gratitude to. You make us stronger. You are fighting for the change and progress we must achieve.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, there's a minority in Canada about whom we can hear hate speech said about with absolutely no consequences. I'm talking obviously about Quebecers. The most recent example comes from a professor of the University of Ottawa who thinks that Quebec is racist. He stated that the Premier of Quebec is a white supremacist, nothing less. He said that Quebec was the Alabama of the North. He accused most specifically the Pure Laine or Old Stock Quebecers of being white supremacists, nothing less. This individual is called Amir Attaran. He won't face any consequences because in Canada, Quebec bashing is allowed and even profitable. I want to name him because I want his name to be recorded in the annals of Canadian parliamentary history that Amir Attaran is a Francophobe and somebody who's ignorant.
The Honourable Member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. COVID-19 has unleashed a surge of anti-Asian racism across North America. From Atlanta to Vancouver and even Markham, the Asian community and especially the Chinese community have been victimized. It began as hurtful comments at the beginning of the pandemic and grew into physical violence. The numbers are staggering. Major cities have seen the number of hate crime grow as much as 700%, and most of the targets are women. I encourage everyone to confront racism when they see it. Racists are only encouraged by silence. Unfortunately, the federal government hasn't done much. A Liberal MP has admitted that, I quote, the federal government has to some extent overlooked Asian communities in its recent anti-racism strategies. The Prime Minister needs to acknowledge the growing anti-Asian racism and do more to tackle it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. Catharines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pretending a problem doesn't exist is not a solution and risks disaster, be it in relation to pandemic or climate change. We're better in a competition of ideas, but we need to start from a reality that is based on science. Climate change is real and all Canadians need to act. That's why our government has put a price on pollution, whose rebate puts more money in people's pockets, and why we've made investments in things like public transit, and why we're growing a zero-emissions vehicle sector. Canadians know that pollution has a cost, and that when it's free to pollute, there will be more pollution. All of us will lose if the Conservative Party is allowed to move Canada in reverse as it continues to deny the very existence of climate change. To the Conservatives who know that climate change is real and that action is required, join us and the millions of Canadians who know it too and are taking real action together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of the victims of the shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. I
invite honourable members to rise.
Oral questions. Question orale, the Honourable Member for Portage-Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, we are over a year into COVID. Lockdowns were set initially across the world to give governments time to get the tools in place that they needed to protect their people. Those tools are now available, tools like rapid testing, vaccines, and treatments. But our federal government, well, they haven't delivered them as quickly as other countries. So when the US, the UK, and others are planning a final end to the restrictions and freedom once again, here in Canada, there is no hope and no end in sight, only the threat of more lockdowns. So, Mr. Speaker, where is the data-driven, detailed federal plan to end the lockdowns? Is there a plan?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we respond to this important issue, I must underscore a matter of deep concern in this House. This past weekend, the Deputy Leader opposite's party once again rejected science and reaffirmed its disbelief in the reality of climate change. I know it is discouraging to many Canadians that a major political party in this country will not acknowledge this basic scientific fact and the threat it poses to future generations. But let me assure Canadians that our government knows climate change is real, and we will continue to implement our plan to address it.
Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
What's real is the government has no plan to end the lockdowns for them. That's something they know is real. Mr. Speaker, another very serious matter I hope we can get an answer to. For over 2 years, the two Michaels have been held in prison in China. Now, while these Canadians are having their so-called day in court, and you know what? Canada's ambassador in China is missing in action. 23 other countries are there to show their support, but our ambassador didn't show up. Why is that? Well, maybe it's because he's maybe hand-delivering that $40 million check from Canada to China for the Asian Infrastructure Bank.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course, I reject the premise of that unusual question. I want all Canadians to know that the release of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig is our #1 priority, and our thoughts go out to both of them and their families at this very difficult time. We, of course, have said for the longest time that arbitrary detention is totally unacceptable, and we're very preoccupied by the lack of transparency in their court proceedings. And we thank other countries for joining us in front of the courthouse for today's trial.
The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Well, actions speak louder than words. The Liberals have used the imprisonment of these Canadians as an implied reason not to deal with Huawei or to deal with genocide and the multitude of China's other abuses. Now, while the two are appearing in this kangaroo court, we've learned the Prime Minister has just sent $40 million to China for the Asian Infrastructure Bank. How can we have any confidence that the Prime Minister is actually acting in the best interest of the two Michaels when he's sending $40 million to the communist regime that took them captive?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have been focused on the release of the two Michaels from the very beginning. We have said very, very clearly that arbitrary detention of innocent Canadian civilians on trumped-up charges is totally unacceptable. Now we are joined by many other countries who also are very concerned about arbitrary detention. And my message to China is that if you're doing business with other countries, it is not acceptable to detain their citizens when you have a difference of opinion with that country. That is not how the international rules of law are applied.
Le député de Louis Saint-Laurent.
Monsieur le Président, généralement.
Mr. Speaker, usually when somebody is facing allegations of inappropriate conduct, there's an investigation. When an investigation is led, is to be very careful, and I'm talking about the case of General Vance. When the Prime Minister's cabinet found out that there was an investigation, what did they do? Increased his salary by $50,000. How can the so-called feminist Prime Minister explain this? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me first make it very clear that our government and I have no tolerance for any type of misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. And let me be clear, I do not determine pay increases. That is done independently and is based on the advice and recommendation of the public service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable député de Louis Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Let's recall the facts. There were allegations of misconduct And recently, the Prime Minister said he was not aware. And then the story changed. He said, oh, yes, it's true. My office was aware. But that changes nothing. The office of the Prime Minister was aware of allegations of sexual misconduct weighing against General Vance, and the Prime Minister, with the support of the Council of Ministers, gave him a $50,000 pay raise. Why? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated, let me be clear that I do not make determined pay increases. This is done independently and is based on the advice and recommendation of the public service. I also just want to point out today in the Defense Committee, we heard from the Harper's former Chief of Staff, and let me quote him, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's office is not an investigative body. Senior officials in the Privy Council's office are the ones responsible for interacting with the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces with respect to this matter. Political staff, ministers currently aren't investigative entities in our system of government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de la Prairie.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. On Thursday, the Government of Quebec will table its budget. Unfortunately, during a public health crisis, it will not be able to massively reinvest in health because the federal government is refusing to do its part. It makes no sense. After seeing everything that our care staff has gone through, after seeing a third wave on the horizon because of variants, the federal government will not give any answer to our nurses and caregivers except with, we'll see after the pandemic. Does the government at least have the intention of increasing health transfers? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way, we've been there for provinces and territories, whether it's billions of dollars in safe restart agreements, $740 million of which was designated to long-term care. Mr. Speaker, whether it was purchasing protective equipment, whether it was purchasing vaccines, whether it was supporting the payment of essential workers through $3 billion in top-up wages. We've been there for provinces and territories. We'll continue to be there for the province of Quebec.
La Prairie.
C'est une hausse des transferts.
What we need for health is an increase in transfers. We need to help our nurses and help our care workers to improve care offered to those who are ill and to our seniors. That's what needs to be done. Our care staff doesn't need to take any lessons from the Liberals or accept their standards. They don't need a meeting among politicians 100 days after the next election, as has been proposed. These parties are disconnected from reality, and what we really need is an increase of transfers during the pandemic. Why is it nobody here understands that? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when Quebec needed the Government of Canada, we were there for Quebec. We sent in the Canadian military to support the care for seniors in long-term care facilities across Quebec. We were there with the Red Cross, Mr. Speaker, making sure that long-term care homes that were experiencing outbreak had trained supportive staff to help the province in a very difficult time for all Quebecers. We'll continue to be there, Mr. Speaker, now and into the future.
L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister found out that his former Chief of the Defence Staff was facing allegations of sexual misconduct. Instead of running an investigation, they increased his pay. That sends a clear message to women in the Canadian Forces that they are not taken seriously and that they are not safe. Will the Prime Minister apologize and prevent the occurrence of such a situation again?
Le Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated, our government has no tolerance for any type of misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. And let me be clear once again. When it comes to pay increase, that is done independently and is based on the advice and recommendation of the public service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Systemic racism hurts racialized people, and in particular, Indigenous people. The RCMP civilian watchdog made two very serious findings. One, the Bushi family was discriminated against by the RCMP, and two, the RCMP destroyed evidence in the case. A year ago, the Prime Minister took a knee at a Black Lives Matter protest, but has yet to take any action. People are fed up with the Prime Minister's symbolic gestures. When will the Prime Minister take concrete action to end systemic racism in the RCMP?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, let me begin by acknowledging my deepest sympathy to the family, friends, and community of Colton Bushy. And we thank the CRCC for their excellent work in providing answers to the questions that the families had. Mr. Speaker, let me also acknowledge that in the report, the CRCC addressed deficiencies in several areas of the RCMP response, including the manner in which the next of kin notification took place. I have spoken to the commissioner of the RCMP. She has accepted all of the recommendations and will work very closely with her to ensure a full implementation to address the deficiencies in the police response identified by the complaints review. Thank you.
The honourable member for Carleton.
When it originally came to light, the Prime Minister had given a $500 million taxpayer-funded grant to a group that had paid his family $500,000. He blamed it all on a bureaucrat over in the employment department, saying his office had nothing to do with it. Well, until last week, when it came to light that Craig Kielburger wrote a message to the Prime Minister's senior advisor. Hello, Ben, thank you for your kindness in helping to shape our latest program with the government. Will the Prime Minister agree to let his top advisor come to the Ethics Committee and explain what role he played in shaping this program that gave money back to a group that had paid off the Trudeau family?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we believe that committees do very important work in this Parliament, and we've also always worked very closely with all committees. Our ministers have appeared at committees, have answered all the questions. We provided the documents that have been requested, thousands and thousands of pages, Mr. Speaker. But my colleague also knows that committees are masters of their own work. They make their own decision, and we will always respect that.
The honourable member for Carleton.
So anxious to see committees do their work that the Prime Minister actually shut down committees, and indeed all of Parliament, for almost 2 months to stop them from answering those questions. He then began another 2-month filibuster to block questions, and today, when we came forward asking for Mr. Chen to come and testify in a motion, Liberal members showed up and began filibustering all over again. Mr. Speaker, if this government has nothing to hide, why don't they let us open up the investigation and find the truth?
Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, mon collègue.
Mr. Speaker, the government maintains that committees are masters of their own destiny, and the member knows it. They can make their own decisions. I'm sure that the Conservatives respected the autonomy and independence of committees when they were in power, as we do now. And this ethics can plays an excellent role in maintaining Canadian democracy.
Richmond Hill.
Le Comité de la Défense étudie de graves allégations.
The Defense Committee is studying serious allegations of sexual misconduct within our Canadian Armed Forces. The committee's testimony is important for the committee and for the public. However, Zita Astravas, former Chief of Staff to the Minister of National Defense, refuses to appear. Will the Minister of Public Safety confirm that his current Chief of Staff, Zita Astravas, will appear before the Defense Committee? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I said it earlier. The government believes in and supports the extremely important work that all committees are doing. Our ministers have appeared, they have answered questions, they've provided documents. We've provided millions of documents, and we do it professionally, and we are pleased to do so. Committees are masters of their own destiny. They take their own decisions, and I hope that they keep this in mind.
Ridges, Richmond Hill. Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, understanding who knew what and when regarding sexual misconduct allegations against the former Chief of the Defence Staff is critical to achieving a Canadian Armed Forces where women can serve equally and without fear. As a public servant, Zita Astravas is in service to Canadians. As the former Chief of Staff to the Defence Minister, her testimony is required. for the Defense Committee to do its work? Will the Public Safety Minister confirm when his Chief of Staff, Zita Astraves, will testify at committee?
Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I said it before. We believe that committee do very, very important work in this parliament, and we always work closely with the committees. We keep working closely with the committees. Our minister are going there all the time. They're appearing. They're answering the questions, very important questions that have to be asked, and we answer those questions. And when documents are asked, we provide them. And I mean, it's in thousands of pages, Mr. Speaker. We do what has to be done. But my colleague knows very well that committees are masters of their own work. She has to respect that, and I hope she will.
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
And the minister says that, Mr. Speaker, as the Liberals filibuster at the Defence Committee to call Zita Astraves. We know the Defence Minister's Chief of Staff briefed the Prime Minister's office regarding serious allegations of sexual misconduct by General Vance back in 2018. The Prime Minister admitted he learned of these allegations before he signed off on a pay increase for the accused general. The women and men who service in uniform deserve respect, but all they get from the Defence Minister is cover-ups. Will the Defence Minister tell Canadians why he failed to flag sexual misconduct allegations to Cabinet before they approved General Vance's pay raise?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated, I do not determine the pay increases. That is done independently based on the advice and recommendations of the public service. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the testimony, the Chief of Staff of former Prime Minister Harper stated political staff ministers clearly aren't investigative entities in our system of government, Mr. Speaker. But also, he also raised the question regarding the leader of the opposition and what he knew about the rumors of that time of the former Chief of Defence Staff. Thank you.
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
And we know from that testimony today, Mr. Speaker, that unlike the Defence Minister, who pushed away and refused to take evidence and do anything with it and participate in a cover-up, our government took that evidence and fully investigated it. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Defence Minister and the Prime Minister knew about allegations of sexual misconduct against Canada's top generals back in 2018 and refused to investigate. Now we learned that General Vance was given a significant pay raise right after the evidence was brought to the minister. This Liberal government's feminist credentials are a joke. Will the Defence Minister explain to the brave women and men in the Canadian Forces why he failed to step in and stop that pay increase?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated before, when allegations were brought forward, they were immediately taken to the Privy Councils for action to be taken, Mr. Speaker. But we also have questions ourselves right now, what was known in 2015 by the member himself, Mr. Speaker, because he was Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of National Defence, and also to the opposition leader that based on the testimony that the former Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Harper had raised. What did they know? Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, what we're going to be focused on is making sure that we prevent these type of misconduct, but more importantly, hold people to account as well. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
The honourable member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Contrary to what members of the Conservative Party believe, climate change exists. However, what's almost as disappointing as this denial is the Liberal bill that's supposed to stop climate change. The government sets no greenhouse gas reduction targets for 2030 or any intermediate goals for 2025, and is subject to no independent accountability. In short, the federal government will continue to be able to do nothing for at least 10 years. Will the Liberals tighten up this bill? Or do they also have doubts about the climate emergency? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to be able to say that for once I agree with my colleague for the Bloc Québécois regarding that climate change exists, and what the Conservatives did over the weekend is extremely worrisome. Such a major party refuses to recognize the importance of climate change. That is deeply worrying, because before being able to find a solution, one must recognize that a problem exists, and the Conservatives refused to recognize climate change. And with my colleague of the Bloc Québécois, I agree that we should condemn what they did. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. It is indeed concerning that the Conservatives aren't recognizing climate change, but you know what else is worrying? Investing $12 billion in the Trans Mountain Pipeline and granting licenses for 100 exploratory wells during the pandemic and offering billions to fossil fuels. And on the other hand, with the Conservatives that don't believe in climate change, and yet over here we have the Liberals who are doing nothing to fight climate change. What's the difference between the two? Can somebody tell me? The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Climate change threatens our health, our lifestyle, our planet. That's why our government is going to set up climate measures as of now. We will keep the promise we made to Canadians to present a plan to achieve this goal, create thousands of jobs, and ensure that we surpass our objectives for 2030 and set up the basis for carbon neutrality by 2050. The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, for once, I agree with the member for Gaspésie-Les-Îles-de-la-Madeleine. Even a minister in this government admits that it's the fault of their own government if fishing season in the islands is being endangered. Ottawa is imperiling the entire region's economy by closing the port's capacity by 37%. The federal government is responsible for the state of the port. It is its job to maintain it. Ottawa has to shoulder its responsibilities. In the short term, is the government going to promise to compensate fishers and businesses for losses caused by the negligence of the Liberal government? The Honourable Minister.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, I was on mute. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my honourable colleague for the question. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with our stakeholders, with transport, with our fishers to make sure that we're doing everything possible to mitigate any challenges that we're seeing with the port. We will continue to work with all parties engaged, and we will follow up with her on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Mégantic.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable.
Vous êtes en sourdine. On va recommencer.
Let's restart. You were on mute.
C'est pas sourdine, c'est le microphone qui est trop.
Perhaps it's the microphone position? Is that better? Yes, thank you. Thank you. On Friday, there was a sad anniversary for Canadians. It's been exactly 2 years, 24 months, since Canadians had a federal budget. 2 years that the Liberal government is failing the test of transparency and accountability. While all G7 countries have presented at least one budget since the beginning of the pandemic, the Prime Minister prefers to hide his inability to present a recovery plan to Canadians. When will the Minister of Finance finally present a budget to Canadians? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my friend, the honourable member opposite, for the question. And with respect, the Minister of Finance will be sharing details soon on the timing of this year's budget. I will remind him, however, though, that during the course of this extraordinary once-in-a-century pandemic, we have gone to great lengths to make sure that Canadians have access to information about where their money is being spent. I can point to a 237-page fall economic statement, the regular practice of putting forward estimates, bi-weekly updates during the COVID-19 committee, and now reports that are going to the Government Operations Committee, in addition to most of the information which we're putting on the Government of Canada's website. I'd invite him to check it out.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, what's going on behind closed Liberal doors is very worrisome. They're unable to curb their own spending and is asking for an increase to their credit line by $663 billion, not million, billion, $663 billion more on the collective credit card of Canadian families, and the Minister of Finance is refusing to explain why we need to borrow so much. They have no respect for the future of our grandchildren. When will we finally have a budget with a real plan for economic recovery? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if my friend opposite thinks that the cost of action has been too great, I'd ask him to consider the cost of inaction. It would have been paid for with bankruptcies at local businesses and individual Canadian households that couldn't afford to put food on the table. With respect to his assertion, I'd point out that the recent report of the International Monetary Fund has explained that while the fiscal deficit and public debt have increased, sizable fiscal support was necessary to help avert larger economic and social consequences. Mr. Speaker, Canadians can rest assured we will continue continue to be there for them through this pandemic, no matter what it takes, as long as it takes.
The honourable member for Abbotsford.
Excuses, excuses. This government has gone over 2 years without tabling a budget, a dubious record. What's worse, they want to increase their line of credit by a staggering $750 billion. And the minister won't even tell us how she plans to use that money. All we know is she has no plan to reopen our economy, no plan to secure our future. The only guarantee is that future generations of Canadians will be left holding the bag. Mr. Speaker, where's the budget? And where is the plan to reopen the economy?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable member for divorcing himself with the conversation at their convention on the weekend on the reality of climate change to bring the focus onto economic issues. Only the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, would suggest that our emergency benefits have been too generous and that Canada couldn't afford them. The reality is, when the coronavirus stopped the Canadian economy in its tracks, it caused serious costs to our communities. The government made the decision that we would be there to support households so families could keep food on the table and businesses could keep their doors open and workers on the payroll. As we move forward, yes, there will be a need for continued investment, but as the chief economist at the IMF has said, that can be fiscally responsible and economically sound.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, due to decades of underfunding and privatization, COVID-19 has cost the lives of thousands of Canadians in long-term care homes. Residents and staff are living and working in unsafe conditions so bad, the Army had to be called in to care for seniors and help overwhelmed workers. Federal governments allowed this to happen by failing to regulate national standards of care and allowing companies to profit off vulnerable patients and those who care for them. Will Liberals put the health of our seniors first and take profit out of long-term care?
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think the member opposite knows that it is not only the right of provinces and territories to deliver health care, but it is also their responsibility. Now, having said that, I think the member opposite knows that the federal government has been there for provinces and territories in protecting seniors in long-term care homes throughout this pandemic and have committed to the development and the upholding of long-term care standards across this country. In fact, we've been there for provinces and territories, Mr. Speaker, to support workers who have been struggling with low wages and with poor training. Indeed, $3 billion, Mr. Speaker, to provinces and territories to increase wages of low-income essential workers.
Honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, 60% of student loan borrowers are women. They hold the vast majority of student debt, accrue more interest, and have more trouble paying it off. And the pandemic has only made the gender gap worse. On Saturday, the NDP proposed a plan to cancel up to $20,000 in student debt per person, stop loan payments until the pandemic is over, and permanently cancel interest. Will this self-proclaimed feminist prime minister stop profiting off the backs of women and students who are just trying to get an education, follow our lead by freezing loan payments, forgiving student debt, and ending interest for good?
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We recognize that student debt, of course, can be challenging for graduates, and that's why in response to COVID-19, we increased Canada's student grants by 50% to help Canadians from low and middle income families. We've improved the repayment assistance program so applicants won't have to repay their student loan until they are earning at least $25,000 per year, and we've expanded eligibility for Canada's student grants and loans for part-time students and students with dependent children. We'll continue to be there to support students and remain committed to making post-secondary education more affordable.
The honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, anti-Asian racism is on the rise. Since the start of the pandemic, there has been a significant increase in hate crimes against the Asian population, from verbal abuse to harassment and accumulating in the violence we witnessed in the U.S. last week. COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on the lives of Canadians, and racism is further increasing challenges faced by the Asian Canadian community. Can the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness inform Canadians how our government is fighting back against hate, discrimination, and racist violence?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member of Scarborough Agincourt for her very important question and for her tireless advocacy. Recent events have reminded us of the tragedy and the unacceptable threats faced by the people of Asian descent, which have increased since the start of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, we strongly condemn these acts and we stand in solidarity with all Asian communities in denouncing racist violence. And Mr. Speaker, last Friday, I convened a roundtable with members of Markham, Thornhill, and Waterloo, along with leaders of law enforcement from right across Canada to discuss ways to raise public awareness and to hold perpetrators to account. Mr. Speaker, we will take action to keep Asian Canadians safe, and that action will be informed by race-based data collection.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Every single Canadian has felt the impact of pandemic restrictions on their mental health. Families are saying goodbye to loved ones on FaceTime. Business owners, gig economy workers are unsure how they will make ends meet. And we're still seeing rises in the level of domestic violence. We need hope and clear advice from the government on the circumstances under which normal life can permanently resume. For example, can a Canadian senior who is suffering the negative mental health impacts of isolation, who has received their vaccine, give their grandchild a hug?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the member opposite realizes this, but many of the situations that she references are in fact at the purview of the provincial and territorial governments. In fact, it's the provinces and territories that, with support from the federal government, develop guidance to be used in all of our jurisdictions. And it's in fact the provinces and territories and indeed local leaders that decide which measures need to be in place to protect citizens. I'll tell you this, Mr. Speaker, our government believes in following science and evidence, including public health leaders, and will continue to do that.
Member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, we are facing a mental health crisis that is worsening by the day. Lives and livelihoods have been lost. Suicide rates have spiked. Depression and anxiety are at unprecedented levels. This crisis is real, and Canadians need real mental health resources now. They don't need another government website. They don't need to be placed on hold because of this government's failure to implement a 3-digit national suicide prevention hotline. Conservatives have a real plan to secure Canada's mental health and well-being. A simple question, Mr. Speaker. Where's theirs?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way, this government has invested in mental health supports pre-pandemic and indeed throughout the pandemic, as the member opposite might realize. In fact, I want to speak today about wellnesstogether.ca. Unlike what the member opposite says, this is not just a website. This is actually direct connections for Canadians across the country to get paid professional help completely for free and in both official languages, translated into 60 others. I encourage all Canadians to check out wellnesstogether.ca today. In fact, over 1 million individuals across Canada have used the program in over 2.9 million distinct sessions.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has raised the issue of Line 5 with President Biden. Will he ask President Biden again to intervene to keep Line 5 open and save 50,000 jobs on both sides of the border?
Le Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Line 5 is non-negotiable. People will not be left out in the cold. Hundreds of thousands of homes on both sides of the border depend on it for heating. Tens of thousands of jobs on both sides of the border depend on it. We take threats to Canada's energy security very seriously. We are standing up for our proud energy workers. They are the ones who are leading our economic recovery. They are leading the way. As I say, Line 5 is non-negotiable. Thank you, Mr.
L'honorable député de Sarnia.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vern Yu, the president of Liquids Pipelines for Enbridge, told our Canada-U.S. Special Committee they'd appreciate the support of our federal and provincial governments by way of filing amicus curiae briefs in the lawsuit, declaring they support Enbridge's position that this is a federal matter of jurisdiction in the U.S. Will our Natural Resources Minister commit to filing such a brief in support of keeping Line 5 open?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Line 5 is a battle that we are fighting on every front, including legal, including diplomatic. We are taking every tack that we need to in order to make sure that we protect Line 5. Line 5 is the most efficient way to deliver the products that Michigan needs to heat its homes and fly its jets and power their economy. And shutting it down would mean 800 extra rail cars a day, 15,000 additional trucks per day, transporting
crude and propane. Mr. Speaker, we don't need more trucks on the road jamming up the 401 and jamming up our already congested border crossings. Line 5 is safe. It has been for 65 years, and it will continue to be so.
L'honorable député. The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on January 27th, the House of Commons unanimously passed a motion, put forward by the Bloc Québécois, calling on the Minister of Immigration to grant Canadian citizenship to Raif Badawi. Now, almost 2 months later, Mr. Badawi remains in prison in Saudi Arabia and is still not a citizen. My question is simple. What has the minister done in the last 2 months? Why is it that Raif Badawi is still not a citizen, despite the request of all members of Parliament from all parties in this House? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada will always defend human rights around the world, and we are aware of the case of Raif Badawi and following it. We are following his case at the highest level, and we have asked for clemency multiple times.
Nous avons un petit
I believe we have a little problem. Okay. Now we have the camera back. What we'll do, just to make sure that everything is properly on the record, is we'll start over with the question from the member for Lac-Saint-Jean, and then we'll have the answer as well. Well, I hope the minister understands the question this time. On January 27th, the House of Commons unanimously passed a motion put forward by the Bloc Québécois calling on the Minister of Immigration to grant Canadian citizenship to Raif Badawi. Now, it's been almost 2 months. Mr. Badawi is still in prison in Saudi Arabia and is still not a citizen. My question is simple. What has the minister done for the last 2 months, and why is it that Raif Badawi is still not a citizen despite the request of all of the members of Parliament of all parties in this House? The Honourable Minister for Immigration. Mr. Speaker, we appreciate this motion that was recently passed by all parties of the House and Senate. We will always defend human rights here in Canada and around the world. Our immigration system is based on compassion and the rule of law, and we should be proud of that immigration system. We will continue to work together with all members to reunite Mr. Badawi with his family. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, that wasn't the question, Mr. Speaker. And I think that this answer shows a lack of respect for Mr. Badawi and his wife and family and this House as well. All members of Parliament have called on the minister to grant Mr. Badawi citizenship. Even the Senate wants to join the movement by passing the same motion. The minister has the discretion to grant citizenship to a person in distress. Everyone can see that this is the case of Mr. Badawi. His life is in danger, and he's been in prison for nearly 9 years. When will the minister grant him citizenship? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I entirely agree with the member. We are very concerned by Mr. Badawi's safety. We are working with our colleagues, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we will continue to defend human rights around the world and here in Canada. We will continue to work with Mr. Badawi's family. It's very important, and we will continue this work together. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have ignored allegations in the Canadian Armed Forces, turned a blind eye to the abusive relationships of former Governor-General Julie Payette. They've turned a deaf ear to employees of Radio-Canada and Quebec who recently reported a toxic work environment. And in the case of the Canadian Museum of History, they let an investigation drag on for more than 2 months following a complaint of harassment. Mr. Speaker, there are victims in all of these stories. When will the minister take action? The Honourable Minister. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. We're currently studying the independent investigation report concerning the Canadian Museum of History case, and we are working directly with the President there. We expect museums to uphold the highest standards of respect and inclusive workplaces, and that includes prioritizing the physical and mental well-being of its staff. The Government of Canada has a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to workplace harassment. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, we have an immigrant from Mexico who's gone through the entire selection process, and his employer is waiting impatiently for him to come. The only thing he needs is his biometric appointment, but the subcontractor, VFS Global in Mexico City, is closed until further notice. If we wait until the pandemic is over, we'll be waiting quite a long time, Mr. Speaker. So rather than making excuses, will the government propose a solution here? And when will this employer be able to get the employer to Canada? The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, our government has strong experience in meeting our immigration targets. Our 2021 plan is based on the economic recovery and recruiting the workers that we need to meet food service, healthcare, and other needs that exist in Canada. We continue to work with employers from various sectors to work on planning for our immigration targets.
Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, offshore oil workers are hard at work keeping our economy running. Yet the Liberals are sitting back and delaying regulations to keep these workers safe on the job. The Liberals waited until the last minute to introduce a bill in the Senate to keep offshore workers safe in their jobs. Well, the Senate has finally done its job, but now the government is dragging its feet again on moving this bill through this House. Enough with the delays. Conservatives are waiting, and so are thousands of offshore workers for 6 years. When will this government stop sleeping on the job and actually get to work to keep oil workers safe?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Workers in the offshore are currently protected. The legal framework continues to be in place. It has been since 2014. Workers are protected under the best health and safety frameworks in the world, and we continue to improve it. That's why it is the best. We are working on permanent regulations with our partners. And when it comes to the lives and safety of the noble men and women who work in our offshore, I can tell you that getting it right is paramount. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, last weekend, the cat was out of the bag. Like many other Canadians, I was shocked to see a so-called modern national party reject the simple fact that climate change is real. The reality is that we are dealing with extreme weather phenomena, such as flooding and forest fires. How can the Conservative Party and its leader really claim that they're ready to govern if they can't admit the reality of climate change? The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Bourassa for his question. Climate change is real. We are experiencing more extreme weather events, such as historic floods and forest fires in Quebec. And despite this, the Conservatives have decided to bury their heads in the sand and reject the reality that we all acknowledge. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the Conservative Party is going backwards. And unfortunately, it is future generations who stand to deal with the consequences.
The Honourable Member for Charleswood St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Mr. Speaker, thousands of students across Canada are struggling to find summer employment in the middle of a pandemic. Families in my community are trying to make ends meet, and students need a job to pay for their education. Last year, the Liberal government's brilliant solution to this problem was to try and pay their friends at We Charity $500 million. Instead of paying their friends again this year, will the Liberals commit to supporting students by increasing funding for the Canada Summer Jobs Program like Conservatives have called for?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And good news, Canada's prosperity and post-COVID economic recovery depends, we know, on young Canadians getting the education and experience they need to succeed. That's why the Canada Summer Jobs Program is an important part of our government's youth employment and skills strategy. Last year, we funded 80,000 CSJ job placements, and this year we're aiming to create 120,000 job placements for young Canadians. We understand the importance of this program, and we will be there to support jobs for young people this year and in all the years to follow. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
The government can only work effectively if they have the trust of Canadians. That trust, however, is eroding. To access benefits, Canadians have to provide their personal information online. However, according to cybersecurity experts, the government is not doing an adequate job protecting that information. The CRA has now closed down 800,000 accounts because hackers are gaining access. My question is simple. What is the government doing in order to beef up security measures, in order to make sure that bad actors aren't accessing Canadians' personal information and using it against them?
Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, il m'apparaît...
Mr. Speaker, it seems clear to me that my colleague is only reading the headlines and not the full articles. The protection of citizens' data is a priority for our government, and that's why the agency deactivated people's accounts in order to prevent identity theft. The government was proactive before the data were compromised. I want to thank employees at the agency who did excellent work on this, and I would invite my colleague to read the details of the articles and read the articles right until the end before spreading incorrect information. I think her constituents deserve better.
The Honourable Member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, since the Minister had no clue about the numbers when asked today at committee, I will fill you in. Enbridge Line 5 safely moves 540,000 barrels of oil to Sarnia each day in order to service Ontario and Quebec. If cancelled, replacing it would require 9 extra 110-car unit trains or 5 barges moving 118,000 barrels of oil each through the Mackinac Strait and the Great Lakes every day. Aside from spouting platitudes and scripted talking points, what concrete results has the Minister received to ensure the continuation of Line 5?
The Honourable Minister.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, everything that the Honourable Member brought up occurs in a place called reality. Reality is a place where Line 5 exists and where workers are on the line. Reality is where climate change is real. It's time for action, not more studies. It's time to deal with reality as it is in a world where climate change is real and where Line 5 is something that is non-negotiable for this government. We know full well what's at stake. 5,000 direct jobs in Sarnia, 23,000 indirect jobs in the region. That's reality, Mr. Speaker, and that is where we live and the job we will do.
The Honourable Member for Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, like many Canadians, was deeply concerned when I saw this weekend that the Conservative Party at their national convention rejected adding "climate change is real" to their policy book. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that a plan for the environment is a plan for the economy. Can the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change please update Canadians on how this Liberal government is building a cleaner, stronger, and more resilient economy?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank the member from Guelph for his tireless work on this subject. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the aisle, the debate truly is settled. Climate change is real. We stand with science and the scientific community on this important matter. I, too, was deeply disappointed when I heard the news this weekend that the Conservative Party is continuing to reject the reality of climate change. Canadians expect their governments to protect the environment and grow the economy. That is why we brought forward a strengthened climate plan in December. Mr. Speaker, it is a simple fact that in the modern world, you cannot grow the economy without having a plan for the environment. And sadly, it's a fact the party opposite has once again rejected.
Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians pay some of the highest rates in the world for cell phone and internet service. For decades, Liberals and Conservatives have sided with the telecom giants, which reduced competitions, led to skyrocketing prices that many Canadians simply cannot afford. Rogers cannibalizing Shaw will eliminate the little competition we have now, raise these outrageous prices, intensify gouging on consumers, and continue to damage our economy. That's why there is a universal public outcry to stop this takeover. Broken Liberal promises won't pay the bills. Will the minister stop this insane merger?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've been very, very clear that greater affordability, competition, and innovation all across the telecommunications sector in Canada are so important to us as a government, just as they're important to Canadians who are concerned about their cell phone bills and their connectivity. And these goals are going to be front and center as we do the analysis necessary to figure out the implications of this proposed deal. The transaction will be reviewed by the CRTC, by the Competition Bureau, by a standing committee of industry, and by our own department. So the work will be done. And Mr. Speaker, Canadians can be ensured that as consumers, they will be protected, as will the public interest be considered all along these analyses. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Mr. Speaker, last week we passed the one-year anniversary of lockdowns, only to hear of another breach of liberties gaining traction, vaccination passports. A forced vaxport raises serious medical and ethical concerns. Health Canada tells us it's unknown whether the vaccine prevents the spread of the virus or even how long the vaccine's effectiveness may last. Many are concerned about leaking of personal medical information, religious freedom, and personal consent. Canada cannot become a two-tiered country. Will the minister oppose vaccination passports on behalf of all freedom-loving Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And unlike the member opposite, we believe in a response that's guided by science, evidence, and public health expertise. In fact, that's the only way to get through this pandemic, Mr. Speaker, to listen to those people who are putting their own lives on hold to help guide Canadians through this incredible challenge. It's important, Mr. Speaker, that we don't sow fear and distrust amongst the public health officials that are doing so much work to get us through this all safely. Mr. Speaker, I call on the member opposite to support a public health response that's based on science and evidence.
And that's all the time we have for question period today.
That's all the time we have for question period today. A point of order. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've been told that during my member's statement, I was told that one of my colleagues was heard speaking over my statement, so I'd like to be able to start over. Yes, I heard that, and I'd like to take the opportunity to remind members appearing virtually to be careful with their microphones and be sure that they're on mute when they're not speaking, to be sure that they don't interrupt someone who is making a speech or making an important statement. And while I'm here, I will just ask all members. I will just make sure to ask all members to make sure that their boom mic is between their nose and their mouth to make sure it works well. And maybe experiment a little bit to make sure it works well. Because depending on the positioning of the boom mic, it can make a popping noise and it may hurt interpreters' hearing.
And just determine whether the best place is between your nose and your upper lip, because that avoids a lot of the pops. Or the other option is to have it just below your lower lip, so that the pops don't affect the ears of the translators or the interpreters, because that is rather painful on their part. So that's my message for today. I'll leave it now to the honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable, l'honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Thank you very much. Canada's future is at stake. The Liberal Prime Minister was there. He seems to want to be the centre of attention, but this is not the time to reimagine the economy and change systems. Canadian workers deserve to get their jobs back, and people from all sectors of the economy deserve to be part of the recovery. But the Liberal Prime Minister has decided to pick and choose which Canadians will have a future. That's not a good solution for the millions of workers who built Canada. What the leader of the Conservative Party wants is a safer future, a more prosperous future, fewer slogans, but more money in Canadians' pockets. After months of sacrifice, Canadians are hoping for a better future. It's not by sacrificing millions of jobs in traditional sectors that we're going to succeed. As the leader of the official opposition said in his excellent speech on Friday, we need to rebuild Main Street. After COVID, only the Conservative plan can offer a stable future for Canadians.
We have another point of order. The honourable member for I'm drawing a blank. Burnaby South, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there have been discussions, and I hope that when you seek it, you will find consent for the following motion: that the House express its horror at the recent mass shootings in Atlanta and its solidarity with the victims of the shootings and their families, condemn the rise of anti-Asian racism and racist attacks throughout North America, and urge the government to take further action to tackle hate crimes, including by A, hosting a federal, provincial, territorial meeting to discuss the rise in hate crimes in Canada, and to coordinate our collective efforts and identify best practices to countering this trend. B, creating and properly funding dedicated hate crime units in every community in Canada. C, establishing national standards for identifying and recording all hate incidents and their dispensation in the justice system. And D, working in collaboration with nonprofits to facilitate the reporting of hate crimes. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed? The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried. We have another point of order for the honourable member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
No, Mr. Speaker, I no longer have a point of order. Thank you.
Very good. Nous avons un autre rappel au règlement.
We have another point of order. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am rising today on a point of order regarding COVID-19 protocols. I have two specific questions. In a report submitted to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs on June 30th, 2020, regarding options for in-person voting, the number of MPs who could attend House sittings safely was 86. As you know, Mr. Speaker, all parliamentarians are following public health guidelines. People are keeping their distance. We are wearing masks when we are not speaking. And there are many fewer than 86 MPs in this House at all times. We have never gone over that number, and no one has ever considered going against these guidelines. Everyone is doing their part. All political parties are doing their fair share. At least almost all political parties are. Mr. Speaker, the virtual chamber is an extension of the physical chamber. But for some weeks, Mr. Speaker, here in the physical House, there have been only 2, sometimes 3 representatives of the governing party. Sometimes only 1. Now, we know that procedure is that the share of members should represent the composition of the various parties. It should be proportional. That's been the tradition for all parts of the workings of the House of Commons. And I would argue that that should apply to the number of MPs that have been recommended for attending in all, while respecting health guidelines and maximums in this House. But that should apply to the governing party. Because, Mr. Speaker, there's no reason for this, especially since for weeks we have been seeing unfortunate contradictions from the governing party. For example, the Minister of Justice always answers questions virtually from his office, which is here on Parliament Hill, only 2 buildings away. So he's not physically here in this House, but he's in his office, which is only 1,023 feet away. And so to get to his office, he's taking all normal risks. He's crossing provincial borders. He is passing people in the corridors. He's passing security officers in the hallways, and he's taking elevators, but he's not here in this House. He even came into this building, West Block, Mr. Speaker, not far at all from here. He spoke with the media a few days ago. in one of the rooms in this very building. In fact, in room 025B, as we all well know, that's right under the physical floor of the House of Commons. So if he's here in this building, then why doesn't he actually come to his desk here in the House of Commons? Another thing, Mr. Speaker, when we leave West Block and we leave by the side entrance rather, we often see in the evening some limousines. Well, perhaps limousines isn't quite the right word, but we see ministers' cars. Not just one or two. Often many more. I don't have any evidence, Mr. Speaker, but it's quite probable that if a minister's formal car is at the door of West Block, well, then it seems quite likely that the minister in question is in West Block. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, if ministers are coming to West Block for cabinet, then why aren't they coming here to the physical House of Commons? And I would repeat, Mr. Speaker, it's not forbidden to be in a different space, given that this has been a virtual house for so long. And we do recognize that the virtual house is an extension of the physical house. But there are some contradictions and inconsistencies here that are very unfortunate. And now, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has left the National Capital Region. He's gone to Montreal, Trois-Rivières. So if he and his cabinet can make themselves available elsewhere than in Ottawa, why can't they also come here to this House perfectly safely while respecting the rules?
The underrepresentation in this place by cabinet members is unacceptable and should be corrected to guarantee the integrity of our responsible government system. Because, Mr. Speaker, the most troubling thing is that the very important doctrine is ministerial responsibility. This is a constitutional convention by which ministers are responsible to Parliament for the actions of the government. And this also means that they have the responsibility to be in the House and to be accountable for their actions and failures. I understand. For the third time, I will be very clear with you. We recognize very well that the virtual chamber is an extension of the House of Commons. But when we see incongruities and contradictions and disappointing situations by ministers and parliamentary secretaries who go to West Block but do not come to sit in this chamber, we think that is unfortunate, and that is why the underrepresentation of this group in the House undermines the institution of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Notwithstanding the fact that the member was addressing the physical presence of members in the House, I would point out to you, Mr. Speaker, that despite the fact that he said that the virtual version of Parliament was an extension, his arguments do not support that. The reality is that there is no difference between, as far as the hybrid setting and the rules that have been laid out, there is no difference between sitting in this House or participating virtually. The member is suggesting that we have a two-tiered system, and the reality of the situation is, and I can hear some of them saying there is, the reality of the situation is this is not a two-tiered system. Whether you are participating virtually or in the House, it is the exact same thing, Mr. Speaker. So this is not, I would suggest to you this is not a point of order. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to understand why this side of the House has chosen to do this. Because it is important, not just for the safety of the members of this House, but more importantly for the safety of the people that work here. And I would bring that to the attention of this member, Mr. Speaker, I would bring that to the attention.
Just going to interrupt. I'm having a hard time hearing the argument because there are some interruptions. It's something that we haven't seen in a while, so I think we're all going to have to get used to it or eliminate it right off the bat. So I'll just stop now, and hopefully I'll hear the rest of the honourable members' argument.
Just to conclude that point, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect to the leader, the House Leader of the Opposition, we are not going to take lessons from him while he stands less than 2 meters away from House officers without a mask on, speaking over top of them. With all due respect. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie, a point of order. I would like to add to what my colleague from the Conservative Party mentioned earlier, and I'm completely in agreement with him, with everything he presented. Over a month ago at the leaders' meeting, I spoke about this situation where there was only one member from the Liberal Party in the House, while at the height of the pandemic, there was a House with 25 MPs at the time, and we agreed with the leader of the government leader to have the most likely ministers to be questioned to come to the House. I hear my colleague from the Liberal Party, and he said that this virtual parliament is an extension of the physical parliament, but we all agree that when we are absent here, or even when it's mostly parliamentary secretaries who are answering questions, when they are far, well, it is possible that the answers may become more evasive, more than usual, you would say. So when they are here, there's more collaboration. That goes without saying. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. But the Bloc Québécois, for over a month now, has been highlighting the absence of the government party in this House. Today, there is only one member, and most of the time, there is only one. And unfortunately for us, this person, and that's okay, but she never answers questions. And we have to get virtual responses, and increasingly, the parliamentary secretaries are the ones fielding the questions. This is a pandemic, Mr. Speaker. The transparency should be a priority for this government, but it doesn't want to answer questions, and I think that is awful, and I completely agree with what my colleague from the Conservative Party said. So the Bloc Québécois fully supports his perspective. Another point of order, and I would also like to remind members that we're flirting with breaking House rules, and that is mentioning when someone is here. It's a gray area, but I think that the line could be crossed. I would remind you to be very careful about what you say. The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure, a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are coming back with additional comments.
We'll return in due course with some comments.
Okay, je vais prendre la question.
I will take the matter under advisement, and we will see whether we need to return to the House.
Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 32-2, I have the honour to table in both official languages 2 treaties. The first is entitled Protocol to Amend the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, done at Palma de Mallorca, Spain on November 20th, 2019. Deuxième,
the second, a bill for coordination between Canada and the United States concerning the use of radioelectric frequencies by radio communications stations online, and carried out in Ottawa, January